Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your time today. And just like Kirsten just said, my name is Dr. Andrew Keener. My role here at the university is the Scholars Advisor in the Honors College. And although my position lives in the Honors College, I also work across campus with applicants to nationally competitive scholarships and fellowships. And that's going to be the subject for our conversation today. So a little bit about the architecture of today's session. I'm first going to talk kind of an overview, offer an overview of scholarships and fellowships here on campus, kind of mixing in some information just kind of generally about what these opportunities are, some examples just so you can get thinking about it. And then also some kind of practical tips about how you can get started, or what are some things you can do to kind of begin the process. What are some useful things to have in mind as you embark on applying for a competitive award? And if you're here in this room, you really should consider this seriously for reasons I'll get into. In the meantime, we'll have time for questions at the end of my slides, which that should take 20, 30 minutes or so. At the end of that, I wanted to kind of give us something kind of more practical and applied. So we're actually going to look at an example of a personal statement from a Rhodes Scholarship applicant. And it's always useful, I find, to think about it, think about this process from the position, not just of you as an applicant, but as a reviewer, what they're kind of seeing as applications come in. So just to get started, I wanted to just begin with this general question. And anybody out there, just feel free to shout out or put in the chat responses to this question. When you hear scholarship or fellowship, what comes to mind? What are you thinking of? What is a scholarship or a fellowship? When you hear these words, what do you think of? Feel free to shout out or put in the chat. Yeah, Jay, thanks. Financial contribution to your education. Money can definitely be involved. Great. Money for college. An award of some sort that not everyone will be awarded. Yeah, it's competitive. Money. Graduate school. Yeah, definitely. These are some great examples. The thing I want to underscore, and we'll get into kind of some of these specifics, but the thing I want to really underscore is that these are opportunities for you. They're really designated for undergraduates, and thinking particularly about young people like yourselves who are kind of thinking about what it is you want to do in the world. What are things you're interested in? Where are things you want to apply yourself as you're embarking on your professional career? They're thinking about you. A lot of times students have this sense of like, oh, well, that's for other people to apply for, not me. And to be real, imposter syndrome is a big part of this. Everybody has it. I definitely have it and have had it. But these are specifically opportunities for you. So I really want to underscore that point. To get to some of the observations you all made just a second ago, these are opportunities that come with money, funding, opportunities for research, travel. You could study abroad, participate in some kind of program outside the US. Graduate programs, somebody said that. Professional connections, and overall amazing life experiences. And in general, the fellowships are going to be more experience-based. Scholarships typically are based on something you've done in the past. So it's an award based on merit, but I'm going to be using those terms pretty interchangeably. One important thing to remember is that awardees are chosen because their proposals align with a particular mission. So you're really going to be applying to a foundation or an agency. It could be a government agency or it could be a private agency, but they invest in someone, they're giving you the keys to the car, so to speak. And they want to make sure that's a person that they can trust with the keys to the car, that you'll do something worthwhile when you have that car, when you're the custodian of that opportunity. So you get to make your case in your application why they should choose you. And this gets back to the competitive process here. So I'm a resource to you on campus to get this process started. I am certainly happy to consult about particular opportunities and to even review application materials before you submit. Before we get into that process, you'll definitely recognize that there are a lot of opportunities out there, far more than I'm going to touch on today. But this is the part of the presentation where I talk about examples of things that you can apply for. Over here on the left, these are just three: the Fulbright program, the Rhodes Scholarship, and the Soros Fellowship for New Americans. There are many, many more. Really what you apply for is going to depend on a few things. Certainly your eligibility. So if you're a senior, let's say, if there's an award that says we accept applications from sophomores and juniors, they won't accept your application. That's just the way it is. But for other awards, it may depend on your interests and goals, whether or not you choose to apply. The thing that I like to point out to students is that if you take the time to apply for one opportunity, you should really take the time to apply for a second. That first one can be a big lift, but the second and third are going to be considerably easier because you already have that bulk of material that you put together for that first opportunity. So modify your materials and apply for more. That's something that not enough students do, in my opinion. And you're basically multiplying your chances of coming back with something. So I did want to get into some examples. Like I said, I'm going to blow through these pretty quickly, but I will, Kirsten, I'll leave you with these slides as a resource if you could forward them to the students as a part of the landscape of opportunities you have out here. So again, partial list here. These opportunities really are for really an assortment of purposes. They come from a variety of foundations. Some are particularly for students from underrepresented groups. So the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans provides graduate funding, for instance, for immigrants or children of immigrants. There's another organization called Latin Americans Working for Achievement, which provides need-based college education scholarships. But there are many others as well. There are programs that have funding available for graduate school. So if you're out there and thinking about graduate programs, there are ways that you can get funding for that, independent of the fact that some graduate programs do supply a funding package. Knight Hennessy is specific to Stanford. So if Stanford University has a program that you're interested in, you should apply to Stanford and this particular opportunity. There's also a local chapter here at UNC Charlotte of the Phi Kappa Phi Honors Society, and they each year reserve some scholarships to students who are wanting to go on to graduate school. There are also national competitions you can apply for, and I really, really strongly recommend applying to those because it's often the case that not enough students hear about it or apply. The competition is not really as fierce as you think it is to get that university endorsement. That's something I'll talk about in just a little bit. There are also opportunities for public service. If your research ties into public service broadly understood, you might be thinking about going into foreign service or doing some kind of US diplomatic work. The Rangel and Pickering scholarships are really, really terrific. And in fact, there's a student who graduated last year, Betsabe Rojas. She's now a Pickering Fellow at Princeton University. And after that, she'll be working for the US Foreign Service. So students at Charlotte do win these awards, and you really ought to consider seriously applying. Here are a few other international opportunities. I like to divide these into kind of research options, study abroad options, graduate program options. Of course, a lot of them kind of coincide. Recently, we had a student here at Charlotte who was a finalist for the Schwartzman Scholarship, and this is basically a graduate program at a university in China. Another opportunity that's open to all students kind of any particular year is the Freeman Scholarship, and this provides language training, professional placement for students who don't yet have any experience with Asia but want to. And that's to say a lot of these opportunities are really for students who want to have some kind of experience or are curious about something, but just haven't yet had the chance to do that. There are also scholarships that are set aside for students who are really eager to explore a language and learn a language that might be useful to the United States. So the Critical Language Scholarship is an example of that. And a current senior, Ellie McCutcheon, is a semifinalist for this award right now. So again, this is my point: is students at this university do advance through the competition and win. So I want you to take it seriously. Now, let's say you're in the room here, whoops, and you are currently a senior. And I know some of you are, because I looked at the list here. So some of you are juniors, some of you are seniors. I think maybe there's a sophomore in the room. These are opportunities, I like to call these the UK scholarships, as well as the Fulbright US student program. These are opportunities you can apply for even after you graduate. And you still have access to UNC Charlotte's infrastructure as you're applying to this. So basically, these are opportunities for advanced study at Oxford University for the Rhodes Scholarship. We'll be looking at an example of a Rhodes Scholarship personal statement, just because telling your story and really writing about your interests and your goals is a part of that process. So we'll get some insight into that. Marshall and Mitchell, respectively, are for higher study programs in the UK or in Ireland. Really competitive programs, but really great opportunities for students who are driven, motivated, want to continue their studies at the graduate level. And then as far as the Fulbright US student program, this is administrated on campus by one of my colleagues, Brad Sekulich, in the Education Abroad Department. And there's a pretty robust support system for students who are interested in either a research project abroad. Students this past year have proposed projects in Uruguay, Colombia. There's a student who wanted to do an artistic project in England. As well as programs where you teach English abroad. There's a student of mine a few years ago who went to Armenia to teach English there. So those are the kind of two programs available in the Fulbright US student program. And I'm happy, of course, to connect you with more information about any of these options as well. In general, you might be, so let's say I've convinced you to really dive deep into these. There are 2 cycles each year. One is kind of early in the fall semester, kind of too early in my opinion, but that's just when it is, with deadlines kind of around September, October, November. There's another cycle that takes place in the spring, or kind of winter rather. January and February are typically when those are. Many of these applications, or at least some of them, require university endorsement. And this is a process for some of the most competitive awards. I see Catherine Brinegar right there. Catherine is familiar with the process of university endorsement. This basically means that there's an earlier deadline, which I administrate on campus. Often that's in the middle of December for a couple of the awards that have winter deadlines. And these applications go forward to the endorsement committee, which I convene along with the Dean of the Honors College. And then I coordinate with the Chancellor's office to secure a letter of endorsement for the university for those students based on the decisions of the endorsement committee. So that's an additional part of the process, which I want you all to be aware of. You don't really see the inner workings of it per se, but it's important to know that that's going to happen. And being endorsed by the university is a really big deal. You know, even if you're not selected onto the national competition stage. But this is a part of the process for certain of these awards, not all of them. All right. So in terms of beginning the application process, I wanted to kind of leave you with a few insights into what it can be useful to kind of have as a mindset, or just based on what I've observed working in this position. I haven't been working at UNC Charlotte very long, really just a couple of years. But when I was in graduate school, I really applied to a lot of different opportunities. I had a lot of support from my mentors and my fellowship advisors. So I learned quite a lot about some useful ways of thinking about this process. And so that's what I share with you today. The first is, you know, what should you be thinking? Well, over here, I've kind of given the game away. You really want to be yourself. I'm going to get into that more a little bit, but ultimately, when you're writing, when you're compiling your application, you're making an argument about why your project or why your plan, why you as a student are worth the organization's investment. And that can be hard to do at the outset. But really think about what some of the most amazing experiences or things that have made you curious or interested. Um, if there's research you've done that has like helped you uncover some realization and you want more, that's something that you want to talk about there. But ultimately, you need to make the case for why your application should advance in the competition, why it aligns with that organization's mission. A question I get a lot from students who are embarking on this process is, oh, Dr. Keener, how can you tell me what they're looking for? And I think I'm of two minds about this question, because on the one hand, these organizations definitely do have like principles and a mission, but they really want your proposal to come from you. So, rather than trying to act like what you think they want, it's always better if you start by thinking about what motivates you. What do you want to do? Sometimes it's easier to answer that question than other times. You all are kind of at the beginning of your career, at the beginning of your journey. So no one's expecting that's going to be super easy, but you can use this as part of your process to be reflecting on those things. And that's super valuable. Overall, I really want to just encourage you to allow your proposals, your writing, and your applications to come from you, because that is really what these organizations want. It should be distinctive and unique because you are. So they want to be interested in, whatever experiences you've had. These organizations want diverse cohorts of students. They want to be bringing on people who have different experiences based on their ethnicity or what region of the country they come from or what class they come from or whatever life experiences they have. So they want to hear those stories in your application. They want to and they also want to hear about things that excite you and successes that you've had. I tell students all the time, like, humility is a virtue, but you got to make sure that you make clear what you've done and what you're excited about. Now, while you're writing your application, the second point I want to make is that you really need to show proof of what you've done. They need examples. In other words, you can't just go in there and say, oh, I'm diligent, I'm a hard worker, I have good grades, and this is why you should take me on. How do they know you're diligent? How do they know you're a hard worker? In your writing, show them you doing something that makes that case clear. As many writing teachers say, show, don't tell. So, you might talk about a research project you've embarked on with a professor. All of you are in a position to talk about that potentially. You might talk about something you've done that showcases some application of your academic work, not just your GPA. A lot of times students think GPA is really the all-deciding factor, or at least really, really critical to their success in one of these competitions. In reality, it's most often one factor among several. So you shouldn't be worried about your GPA. It should be rather, what are the things that you have done? Have you contributed to your community around you? Depending on the opportunity that you're applying to, they're going to want to know about that as well as your leadership. Have you shown leadership in some way? It doesn't have to mean being the president of a club or an organization, but is there some way that you have distinguished yourself by helping guide people towards some common purpose or goal that's in line in some way with your interests? I'll say one more thing about meeting the mission, just because this is an area where a lot of questions typically come up with students I'm working with. It's important for you to research the particular scholarship foundation or organization really well as you're embarking on the application process. If you get to the interview process, and the same thing could go for a job interview, if they ask you kind of a basic question about something that they do and you don't know the answer, or you're kind of asking them for follow-up questions, it's going to be clear that you don't really know too much about what they're doing. And you want to be able to demonstrate that because you want to show you're interested. So in this case, as you're looking through their website, and a lot of these opportunities have really robust and abundant websites, what keywords or phrases are coming up that connect with your interests? Just so you can kind of create that link. Because if you can have that conversation with someone potentially through your application of, you know, I want these things or need these resources that you have, and you want people who do these kinds of things that I happen to do, then it's a perfect match. So make that case for them. I always have to put this point here that if you don't meet the mission, then your application runs the risk of not being selected. It's just the way it is. So if I'm, you know, applying for the high wire exploding balloon fellowship, and I don't talk about high wires or exploding balloons, you know, I talk about hubcaps and, you know, snakes. This is just a stupid example, really, but you need to be on target about talking about why your project or why your interests meet the mission of that particular organization. Finally, you know, making yourself a strong candidate. What can I do to stand out? This is where I like to open up the question to all of you. Feel free to share either by unmuting or adding in the chat box. What are some ways that you think you can be a strong candidate or stand out in these competitive competitions? What are some steps you can take to kind of distinguish yourself? Take advantage of opportunities. Yeah, definitely. Building strong relationships with the professors you work with. I love that one. Professors do play a key role in this process. Being involved a lot in college, definitely. Involved in campus organizations, got from someone else. Great. Okay, Jay, I think yours is kind of about something about how you are talking about yourself in your essays and in interviews. Don't repeat yourself. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of you want to be able to drive home your central points, but rather than repeating yourself, think about the quality of the examples that you're talking about, right? But you need to have, for everybody who said, you know, getting involved with professors or, you know, getting involved with different groups on campus. That's the stuff you can talk about. Those are the examples you can talk about here. Yeah, and Josh, you mentioned people in your network that can vouch for you, right? So there are some opportunities where it's going to be not just faculty, but maybe people in the community or an internship manager you've had who can attest to your skills. All really good things. I'm going to run down a quick list here. These are all going to be kind of, some of these are going to be familiar. Talk with your faculty, conferences, publications. Depending on the opportunity, these could be really vital to talk about. Apply for local opportunities or scholarships or honors. Campus community need, we covered that base. Being involved, really critical. And seeking out opportunities for leadership of your style. Being engaged, being involved. The last thing that I want to put forward here is really about the fact that rejection is a part of this process. And like, you know, so is imposter syndrome. We all feel like we're not enough at one time or another. But I'm here to tell you that you are enough, that you can do it, and that rejection just happens to be a part of this process. And it's a neutral value thing. Rejection is just a neutral value thing. It doesn't say anything about you as a person, doesn't say anything about how good you are or, you know, what you're going on to do after this. But really, I want to make this point just abundantly clear that it's not really just about the award, it's about the process that counts. So in that sense, it's really important to avoid any kind of thinking that it's like, oh, if I win, then it's the best and I did it and it's all me and I'm amazing. And if I lose, then it's bad and I'm bad, and I'm a failure. This kind of thinking, you know, just clear it away, because really, if you're thinking about this as a growth mindset, then whatever the process, whatever the end point is, the process itself has been developmentally important, valuable to you as a person. Treat it as a journey. And each time you embark on this, each time you decide to apply and assemble or revisit your application, you're developing skills that are going to be important and valuable to you for graduate school or your career. We all have those times in life where we're kind of hailed to talk about ourselves, or tell stories about ourselves. This is a small chance to do this when you apply for a competitive award. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And that serves you in professional circumstances, in personal circumstances, in lots of different kinds of settings that you have in life. So with that said, this is my email address. I'll make sure that you get this whole presentation. I'm happy to connect with you to schedule an appointment and talk about opportunities. This is kind of the off season for a lot of competitive awards, which means there's a good time to be thinking about next year to kind of set a plan for yourself about when, especially if you're thinking about applying to graduate school, or if you're thinking about what sort of opportunities you could be pursuing within the next year. So I'm looking at the time and it's just about 10:30, but I wanted to make sure that there were time for questions. So I'll kind of open things up right now. If you have any questions for me, we'll do a brief questions and discussion right now, after which point I want to connect you all with a personal statement from a Rhodes Scholarship applicant, which we can kind of look at together. So what questions do you have for me, just based on today's discussion? Very thoughtful group, I can tell. Still thinking about all of your questions. All right, question from Josh. Thanks for getting us started, Josh. So, can alumni reach out to you regarding scholarships and fellowships? I'm glad you asked that. So, yes, you absolutely can. In fact, it's pretty common that students who have graduated but are thinking about applying to this or that award do reach out to me. I was just in touch with a student who graduated a couple of years ago who has been applying this year to a few different opportunities. So yes, you can. And depending on where you go, if you let's say that, like this person I was just talking about, you're at another university for a graduate program, you can certainly connect with me, but you can also see what resources that campus has, and kind of use both of them to your advantage. Right, Jessica has a question. Is it worth joining an honor society? And if so, could I join 2 or 3? So, I think this is really, I wouldn't want to give a comprehensive answer to this question. I think maybe the answer I would give would be, it depends. It depends on what you want out of belonging to an honor society. Is it, the prestige, or is that part of the value that you attain from it? Is it maybe the community on campus or elsewhere that you gain from being a part of this community? There might be opportunities, however, and so this is my fellowship advisor, putting my fellowship advisor hat on. There might be fellowships, like Phi Kappa Phi, for instance, does have graduate fellowships and other fellowships that you can be eligible to apply for if you're a member. If you're not a member, you're not eligible. So in that case, that's a perk that being a member of that particular honor society could be worthwhile to join. Overall, it will depend on you. I know that some students are kind of thinking about honor societies. Some of them have fees, and it really just depends on what it is that you're, interested in. And I certainly see it coming at it from a competitive fellowship perspective. If that's a perk, then that's something to consider if you're making that choice. I hope that's helpful. Catherine has a question too. If someone doesn't know what kind of opportunities are available, are you able to help narrow it down for them and identify what they'd be eligible for? This is a great question. So thanks, Catherine. At the end of today's session, I'm actually going to share with you all a questionnaire. And I make this questionnaire precisely for this purpose, because there are so many opportunities out there. This questionnaire poses questions like, how do you identify yourself? Are you a first-generation college student? Are you a US citizen? Are you What's your major? What are some things you'd like to accomplish? And there are a few choices. So I use this questionnaire. Who are some professors in your life who could support your application? So these are the questions I use to narrow down for you and to also help you getting to the point where you're reflecting on what opportunities are available. And I'm happy to share as well with you all a big long list of opportunities. It's got maybe 60 or 70 on there. It's not comprehensive, but it can be pretty overwhelming. So that list, along with the questionnaire, I'm very happy to share with you. So stay tuned for that this morning. Other questions out there? Sometimes students ask me about other kind of strange and unusual aspects of competitive scholarship applications. Sometimes interviews are involved, not always. But I want you to kind of have a broader sense of the landscape of resources on campus. So the University Career Center allows you to practice interviews. You can also find assistance for things like a cover letter or resume. Those things come up in competitive fellowship applications often. So the University Career Center can help certainly for like internships or jobs, but can also help towards competitive scholarships and fellowships. And I think also our University Writing Center, your faculty, I'm certainly a resource to you for the broad stretch of competitive scholarships on campus. But Dr. Julie Goodliff, who works in the graduate school, is particularly available to help students who are applying to STEM-related grants like the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship. And then I mentioned the Office of Education Abroad, which kind of has a administrative position with the Fulbright U.S. student program. So that's more part of the landscape, but there are lots of different resources on campus you can use to your advantage as you go about this work. Certainly the Office of Undergraduate Research is kind of a no-brainer for the research-focused awards too. Ethan has a question here. How important is it to be in a prestigious program, and how can you mitigate this potential lack of prestige with scholarships? Yeah, this is a really great question. So I like to think about this kind of in two ways. You know, you might be imagining yourself in an application as you're working on your application, like, how am I going to get this? I'm competing against someone from Harvard. And how are they not just easily going to win this over me? It really just depends. You don't know, first of all, who else is applying, and you also don't know what precisely the reviewers are looking for. It is also true many, many times that as these like very prestigious awards, so let's say the Rhodes Scholarship, a lot of these organizations realize that they do and have had real image problems in terms of not having very representative groups, very male, very white. And as they seek to diversify their cohorts of students, they're actually interested in bringing on students from public land grant universities or regional public universities, very much like UNC Charlotte. And as a way to broaden access and bring in students, first generation college students, for instance, who like 30 years ago maybe would not have gotten to finalist level with them for really terrible reasons. As this discussion about access continues, it's my sense that there's actually a broadening channel for students here at Charlotte and other state universities, rather than kind of the prestigious elite private universities in the Northeast. This kind of answering your question. So in that sense, prestige can kind of be a double-edged sword. Getting into a prestigious fellowship program, on the other hand, allows you access to resources that are really terrific and can help you advance through your career and then continue to open doors for other people. So I see it that way too. And then how to get TA or GA, and to whom should we mail for getting one? Hari, I think if I can understand your question, is this about like a graduate program? Okay. Well, I mean, you're touching on what's a really good point, which is that graduate programs often have funding packages that might include a teaching assistant package or a graduate assistant package. Um, I mean, I think it really, again, I think it depends on the program, what they have available. So, I wouldn't want to speak comprehensively here, but it's never a bad thing if you're interested in graduate programs to start doing research on the programs you're interested in and seeing what they offer. The more financial support and the more kind of funding packages that might include something like a graduate assistantship or teaching assistantship, the more you'll be able to focus on your studies and not have to worry about making ends meet outside of your classes. So I really see that as a positive thing. It's also, definitely not something out of the question for you to write to a professor in that program and ask them, I'm interested in this program. Can you tell me if you're accepting students next year? I highly recommend talking with your professors about this too here at Charlotte, because they've all been to graduate school, they've been through this process themselves, and especially with your particular discipline, professors in your major will be there to help. So thanks for all your questions. What I wanted to do now, and I'm attaching this in the chat box. Just hang on one second as I find this. This is going to be an example of a personal statement that was written for the Rhodes Scholarship. So remember, this person wants to continue with their studies, continue with their research at the graduate level at the University of Oxford. So attaching this now. I'm going to set a timer and leave you about 5-6 minutes to read this over. And then I want us to talk a little bit about this personal statement. What do you observe? If you were a reviewer, would you accept this proposal? That's one of my questions for you. If you were a reviewer, would you accept this proposal? And why? What were the things that you thought were effective? What were the things that really caught your attention or made you think that
that's literally why I was like, same. Like, yeah, same.
On the other hand, if you're feeling like there are things that you found confusing or where you kind of felt like your interest started to wander, let's talk about those instances too. So I'm going to leave you about 6 minutes, and then we'll pick up and have some discussion about this personal statement. I wanted to give just another minute or so, if you haven't finished reading, just to kind of find your way through the rest of the personal statement, and then we'll start talking about it. Okay, everyone. So it's been about 5 minutes or so, and I hope this has been enough time to at least familiarize yourself with this piece of writing. It's a personal statement written for the Rhodes Scholarship. So this person wants to study in an advanced level at Oxford University. The Rhodes Scholarship really provides full funding and support for that in a really prestigious way, to go back to that word. So I wanted to kind of ask you what you thought from a reviewer's perspective, what you felt was working well, what you felt was what you observed. So Josh, you say this is like a college application and a cover letter combined. So yeah, maybe some of you have written something kind of like a personal statement before, maybe not. It is a distinctive genre of writing that comes up a lot in these opportunities. And in it, you're really, I mean, sometimes the prompt can be very vague. They might say, tell us about yourself in 1,000 words. It's a really, really difficult challenge to do. And this is why, as you're getting into the process of writing, it's not just something you're going to write one time and be done. Often it requires returning again and again and revising again and again. I have a background as a writing instructor, so that's one area I can really help you with. But you can look to your faculty as well, to the writing center on campus for additional support and different sets of eyes. That's always helpful, even if it's just somebody saying, here's what I see in this, right? So speaking of, here's what I see in this, and feel free, everybody, to share if you have other observations about the personal statement we're talking about here. Catherine says there's a bit of jargon in it. I'm unsure if the reviewers are in the student's field and expected to know what the terms mean, or if the student should define them a bit more plainly. Question of jargon. All of you participating in research, you have potentially something that I call the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is something that's beautiful. It means that you're really deep in your field. You have the depth of knowledge, you have the jargon, you have the skills associated with your field. But I also call it a curse. It's the curse of knowledge, because it means that communicating that to someone who's not initiated might be hard. And that's part of the challenge of writing a personal statement sometimes. As Catherine observed, you've got to communicate the intricacies of your research to someone who maybe isn't really enveloped in that field. We as a society have this divide all the time of really, really intricately focused, intensive researchers and a public who's curious, but maybe doesn't have the vocabulary for that. How do you bridge that divide? Well, you get experience with that challenge when you write one of these. So Catherine has that question. Maybe this person could tone down the jargon if they were to revise this one more time. How can you convey your depth of knowledge of something without losing your readers in the jargon? All right. Ethan has an observation too. Thanks, Ethan. The roads example provides an interesting way of introducing herself in the context of her activity and relating it to the main argument inside it. Right. So I think that this is a great observation. A personal statement can be an introduction to you. I like to think that if the Rhodes Scholarship or like a lot of these scholarships, if they really had their way, they'd actually be able to interview every single one of you and get to talk with each and every one of you for an hour. Then they'd really get to know you, right? Like an interview is so much better than a short essay, like 1,000 words. But time is a constraint and geography is a constraint. Everybody's located everywhere. So for contests like this, the essay is really the way they got to do it. And you want to provide them an invitation or an introduction to yourself. What are some things that you've done? Remember, I mentioned examples. That's something you could think about. What are the examples this person uses? How are they providing an introduction to them? Some great other observations that you have about this person's, what examples they do include. How are you feeling about this candidate? It's working really well. What are some of the reasons that you feel that's the case? If you got turned around or confused while reading, what were some of those instances? I love long, awkward pauses, by the way, just so you all know. So
How many of you think that you can raise your hand? I think that this is a good candidate. They have a strong personal statement. Maybe we can get some hand raises.
yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah. Oh, Ethan put in the chat. I noticed the progression past to now and then. The future was quite interesting as a choice, which engages the reader even more, and I'm definitely going to incorporate it into my personal statement.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, I'm seeing a number of hands here.
From people who said that they did like this candidate, what is something that you did like? Other than Ethan. Mhm.
Well, Kirsten, I mean, that question right there is kind of a vital one in the room when I'm observing the endorsement committee making deliberations about which candidates to advance. It's less a sense of like, oh, well, you know, I kind of felt good about this one, right? You have to back it up with proof, with examples. And that's why the examples are really critical to effective personal statements. So, you know, I wanted to show you all this and stage a little bit of discussion, really just to get the wheels turning for you all about what an instance of a personal statement can look like for just one opportunity. And the questions, the prompts, they're going to be different based on the opportunity. It really will just really depend. But I want you to know that there are resources on campus to help you through this process. All right. Oh, Christopher, thanks. You're sharing something too. Definitely seem to project a sense of passion for their field. It's a pretty typical tactic for writing these. So most will probably look that way, but they had experiences and specific instances to back up that statement, right? Experiences, you want to talk about your experiences, your particular instances, examples. Yeah, passion, everyone's going to want this. I'll just kind of end this segment really quickly by saying the first time I applied to a competitive award, I was a master's student. So if you're thinking about this right now, you're ahead of where I was. back then. And I was getting ready to apply. And I met with my professor and he said, well, Andrew, your application says, I'm very interested in this opportunity and I'd like to apply. And it would be great if I could participate in this research institute. He said, everyone thinks that. Literally everyone thinks it would be an amazing thing to go to this research institute and participate in this. But why? Why you? Why is your project important? What are the specific reasons why they ought to choose you? So that's something that I carry with me. As a final point, Catherine's saying that the candidate is bridging two fields of interest, women's studies and anthropology. So that's how they bring the reader in, and there's kind of an aha moment of bridging these two fields. Yeah, great observation, Catherine. Something kind of unusual, right? That maybe makes the student stand out, not because they're trying to, but that's just who they are. The student felt compelled to study these two fields and is making kind of an inroad into that intersection. So again, I want to make the point, it's, your personal statement will be distinctive because you are, because you're you. And that's certainly the case in this person's. We all have our own stories as we go through life, and rather than concealing that in favor of something you think they might want, it's better to be authentic, to be genuine as you write. So that's kind of the final takeaway in our discussion here. What I want to do is I'm kind of wrapping up here is I'm going to put in the chat box a kind of ugly looking URL, which actually is a web address to the questionnaire I was talking about. So if you click that, it should take you to the competitive scholarship applicant questionnaire. There's a series of questions which you can fill out this morning. It doesn't take too long, but it equips me with some insights about your interests, goals, opportunities that you might be interested in applying for through the competitive scholarship program here on campus, which I administrate. And at the very bottom, you can sign up for a consultation with me, which I'd be happy to talk more. So that's basically kind of the end of my prepared remarks and exercises today. If any of you have any other questions, just let me know. I think maybe we have a couple minutes for a question or two, and then I'll turn things over to Kirsten.
While we let some questions roll in, thank you very much. This was very informative. I know I learned, I always learn something coming to these, so this was really awesome. Sorry. But I love that you provided that example. I think that was really great for students. And yeah, we're about at time. Does anyone have any other questions? You all will be getting the PowerPoint later, so you can have that as a resource. And the recording will be up on the YouTube, so like on the OUR YouTube.
Right, and I just, thanks, Kirsten, and I just put my email address in the meeting chat as well, just so you can see that there. If you have any other questions that come up, you're welcome to email me, and I'm a resource to you on campus. If there's something that I can't help you navigate immediately, then I will help you, connect you with the resources that can. Regarding competitive fellowships on campus. So thanks for your time today. Really,
Dr. Keener?
Oh yeah, Claire.
Sorry, would you be able to send the link to the questionnaire in an email again? I'm on my phone right now, but I'd rather do it on my computer in a little bit.
Certainly. I'll share that to Kirsten when I send her the presentation. Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, like I said, thanks again. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and everybody take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Keener. I think Sarah will reach out to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, with a thank you from OUR. All right. Well,
Great,
thank you
great.
very much.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.